Okay, so let's see how many students we have today. We have lots of conditional conversation, but what we'll do is we'll fill the space until we have some students join us shortly. Now, this is going to be lesson 8 to 10, a focus 8 to 10, that will go into a little bit of practice, just a revision of the conditionals. We can look again at how they're constructed, and we can also try to create some answers of our own and see how these kind of bits of language can make a really creative English user. We can do this really well. So, first of all, welcome to the YouTube channel. As you all know, we are stuck in our homes inside without the ability to go outside. So we're coming live from our homes and various schools that still have people going to them into your homes so that hopefully you can continue your learning progress. Now, of course, some of this is difficult because you need to speak. Our method at my yes is speaking, lots and lots of speaking, practice, 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 practice. So I want you guys to remove yourselves from your worries. I want you to stop feeling inhibited, frustrated, or shy. And I want you to be speaking to me through the computer. There are two ways you can do this. One, you can do it on your own, speaking into the air. Practicing is really useful. Or two, you can type into the comment box this way or this way. I still haven't figured out which direction the comments box is. So for me, future reviewing this is my right. So we'll find out if it's that direction. My right. Okay. So welcome to the stream. Hopefully we will get a few more students with us. And we're going to look at some conditionals with me. That's me, Rab. I'm an English teacher at Milan Filzi. So some of you might be one of my students, some of my students, some of you won't have met me. I'm from Edinburgh in Scotland. I've been living in Milan for the past year or so and really getting to know and enjoying the MyYes experience with you guys. You students are fantastic joining us today, even in this terrible situation of the coronavirus. So we'll see how many students we get. We'll see how much practice we can get going. But first, I want to introduce you to the focus. This is going to be great. We're going to have a look. I'm going to flick back between here and here. Hey, Cinzia, nice to see you. Please, guys, send your messages and I'll put them on the screen. And remember, there is going to be a thing called lag. Now, lag equals display lateness. So mechanical delay. Lag is the time it takes for me to say something, to get to the camera, go through the internet to you, then you need to hear it, type back into the box and get back to me. So be prepared for lag. I want you typing in there your answers quick. I want you typing in really well. The first thing I want, Cinzia, can you tell me you can hear me well? Because I do have headphones and a microphone, but I think it could be fine with my on-screen microphone, okay? If you cannot hear me, tell me, okay? Tell me. If you cannot hear me, tell me. If you can't hear me, tell me. That introduces our first bit of language. If you can't hear me, tell me. No, there's something missing. The way, if you can't hear me, tell me. It's fine. Fantastic, Cinzia. Excellent. So if you can't hear me, tell me has an if clause. And if is one of the key words for conditional language. If this, then this. Hey, Andrea, nice to see you. If this, then this. From this clause, this condition happens. This is the result or the following condition. This language can be really interesting, can be really dynamic, and really important for communication. It can be really useful. Here, if you can't hear me, is a present simple statement. Tell me is an imperative statement. It's an imperative statement. So as we look at our conditionals, we learn our conditionals in a strict formula. If, present simple, will statement, etc. Or if, present simple, present simple. So the grammar is clear often, but I want you today to become quite creative with this. There are lots of ways of expanding the conditional languages with things like modal verbs, things like imperatives, things like unless, whether instead of if, this kind of language. So we're not going to go too far into this, but if you can, try sending me some messages and we'll see what we can do. Okay, I guess we should probably look at some material. So let's have a dive in. I'm going to jump into the corner here and maybe we'll see if I can make it bigger on this side here. There we go. And that should be much bigger. Okay, of course, it's a focus 8 to 10. So our attempt here, we are going to try to speak at home and type into the box down in the corner, whichever side it happens to be. Today, we have focus 8 to 10. What would you do? Oh, straight away, in the start, in the title, we have some interesting language. You'll notice here, in this question, we have the word would. Now, would can be a bit confusing, especially for the pronunciation. You see, I'm Scottish, so I have a strong oo sound. And I say would. Notice that the L is silent. Not would, it's would. This has a strong form and a weak form. You have I would, very short. I would go home, I would say, I would speak. Notice how short that is in my speech. I would speak to him. That's really, really short. I would speak to him as soon as possible. I would go home. I wouldn't go outside for the coronavirus. Okay, so we also have the strong form. Yes, I would. We use the strong form in short answers. And you'll notice that my pronunciation is a little bit longer. Would you speak to my boss, please? Yes, I would. I would. A lot more emphasis on the w. Let's compare those two. One, short form, weak form in a sentence. I would go. I would go. See how fast that is? I would go. Really fast. Yes, I would. Yes, I would. So when you're listening to a native speaker, when you're listening to someone who is very confident with English, you'll need to hear this short form. I would go. Or even the contracted form. I'd go. I'd speak. Notice how fast that is. I'd. I'd go, as opposed to I would. Now, in the short answer, we do not contract. We don't say I'd. Yes, I'd. No, not good. We need to say the whole word. Yes, I would. I would be happy to. Is fine. Okay, let's come back to our activity and see if we can move on with it. We have our focus of the day, revision of the second conditional and the third conditional. Two important conditionals, which are often structurally a little bit more confusing to make. But once you start using it and start practicing, it's not too complex. Now, some of you will have studied the second conditional, and some of you the third. So don't worry, I'll explain the third as we go. But first, we're going to start with the second. We're also going to do lots of asking questions. So that's your opportunity to be typing in the box and responding to me really well. We're also going to be looking at hypothetical questions. So hypothetical questions are quite important today. I'm going to be doing a lot. So let's move into here. When is the second conditional used and how is it formed? The second conditional. So we already have the zero conditional and the first conditional that are quite logical conditionals. They have a strong attachment to probability. If you say the first conditional with will, then it's going to happen. There's a strong likelihood it will happen. If I find a wallet on the street, I will give it to the police. This is the first conditional. Moving into the second clause, the result. The second conditional, however, has a different form. I'll give you an example. Maybe we can get an example rather than, and you can find out. If anyone knows, type it into the box, okay? If you know, get typing. I want some interaction here. Cinzia, Andrea, I want to hear some of this examples. The second conditional, if I was French, I would speak French. If I was Italian, I would search for a Scottish girlfriend. If I was an elephant, I would remember everything. Now, that's quite strange, right? That doesn't sound like reality. That doesn't sound like something true. Sounds like something hypothetical. So the second conditional is used for hypothetical situations, imaginative situations, or potentially completely impossible situations. So if I was an elephant, then I would walk in the desert and swim in the sea. But I'm not an elephant, so it's impossible. Let's have a look at the structure. We've got here, let's look at the stuff here. Okay, we've got a message here actually before. We've got great examples from the Jacko 91. If I won the lottery, I would be rich. Fantastic. Now we've got one, and if we look at our screen, we've got if plus past simple. If I won the lottery, a classic, and then an if and a would clause. Now, interesting here to note, after the if clause, we need a comma if we're writing this to make it different, a different clause. I would be rich. A would clause. Fantastic. Let's have a look at Cinzia's. If I had more time, I would go to the cinema. Excellent example. Had is our past simple and would clause afterwards. And notice we have here the comma was really useful in writing. And let's look at Andrea. Second conditionals are used to talk about hypothetical situations in the future, right? In the present or future. So it's absolutely created. Okay, let's have a look. Oh my God, Rab, nice to see you, Peter Sumner. I'm so excited. Fantastic. So we already have some great examples. We've got if I, past simple, followed by a comma and a second clause, secondary clause, introducing the would. This is the hypothetical situation. And we're using this to describe the present or a future hypothetical or imagined scenario. Really great. It's great to have you here with us, Peter. I hope I can teach you a couple of things. But otherwise, feel free to dive in with your examples. We have a few students who are doing fantastically so far. So we're going to come back to the material here. And look in here, we have some more examples here, although the students produced some fantastic examples already. So the ones we have here, if I won the lottery, a classic, done well by the Jacko earlier on, I would sail around the world. So that secondary clause can be as complicated as you want. I would be rich is a simple statement, is good. Or we can start imagining different things we can use this language with. I would sail around the world. I would sail until I was lost at sea. And I was, I don't know, I don't know if that would be useful with winning the lottery. Look at the second example. If I could live anywhere, I would live in New York City. So could here is being used in the past sense of the word can. Could is also a word used in conditional language as well, but here we're using it in the past simple. If I could live anywhere, I would live in New York City. Fantastic. The structure is still there. If I could live anywhere, really nice. We've used it there to create more hypothetical scenarios, more imagined scenarios. If I were taller, I would play basketball. It's a sad one. If I were taller, but I'm not, unfortunately. I'm not taller. So it's an imagined scenario, something created, something invented, something imagined. Okay, so we have our construction. We know how to make it. This is why it seems a little bit less logical a construction, because that past simple makes us automatically think, am I speaking about the past? No, be careful. We're not speaking about the past. We're speaking in a conditional sentence. We're speaking in the second conditional. So be a little bit careful. That's often a problem. We are not ready to listen to the conditional language when we hear the past simple. So guys, remember at home, I want you to continue typing out examples. Show me that you're confident with this language. Give me some more. Now we're going to have some scenarios that we can continue to create language with. So let's have a look here. We've got, what would you do if you won $1 million in the lottery and you had to spend it in 10 days? Now, you have two options with this. You can repeat the whole statement again. You can say, if I won $1 million on the lottery, I would spend it on this, I would buy that, I would rush to the shops in fretta. I would rush to the shops. I would do this and do that. But a much more common way to answer this, because the conditional is already constructed in our conversation with my question, you might choose to just say, oh, I would do this. I would do that. So you don't need to repeat the whole language point. As a learner, it can be useful to repeat the whole language point, but native speakers don't often do this unless they are trying to make time to think. And that can be a really good way to slow down your thinking. Okay, guys, what would you do if you won the lottery and you only had 10 days to spend the money? Get typing. I want some examples. Come on, Peter, give me your example if you have one. What would you do? Would you buy a flight? Would you try desperately to buy some property? What would you do? Andrea, Cinzia, the Jacko, you're all with me. Get typing. What would you do if you won $1 million in the lottery and you had to spend it in 10 days? Okay, while you're typing, while you're getting all that going, I'm going to move on to a second question, and I'm looking forward to your answers, but just to keep some stuff on here. What would you do if you had the chance to travel around the world, all expenses paid, for 7 days, but would lose your job in the meantime? Oh no. Okay, before we move on to that, because that's a big question, let's get Alessandro's answer. If I won $1 million in the lottery, I would buy wonderful buildings in the center of Rome. Now, I totally agree. That would be an amazing thing to do. I would definitely join you. I'm a little bit worried about the period of time. Would you be able to do that in 10 days? I don't know how strict we're being on this kind of structure, but certainly if I won is excellent. Now be careful, Alessandro. Don't forget your capital. I know we're on the internet, and sometimes on the internet, grammar and punctuation sometimes gets a bit broken, but try to make capital letters at the start and throughout. If I won $1 million in the lottery, don't forget your comma. I would buy wonderful buildings in the center of Rome. Between buy and wonderful is an opportunity for a quantifier. I would buy some. I would buy a lot of. I would buy all of the. Lots of opportunity here, but a good example. Me too. I would love to do some. Okay, looking at Andreas. I would buy a big house, a new car, and finally I would travel around the world. Excellent. Andrea, again, don't forget your capital I for punctuation in here, but lovely. I would buy a big house, a new car, and finally I would travel around the world. I love it. Yeah, definitely. Get those plane tickets as soon as possible. I bet they're cheap right now. Don't worry about forgetting the comma, but it is important. Of course, in speech, you don't need it, but in writing, you will need it. Okay, let's have a look here. If I won $1 million on the lottery, I would stay on holiday all my life. Fantastic, yeah. I worry about this. I think I would miss work. I need to feel like I'm doing something. But for sure, I would be teaching from a beautiful beach. I would be teaching from a beautiful beach. Absolutely. So here is a great opportunity to talk about a preposition. We win $1 million on the lottery or in the lottery. Now, in the material, it says in the lottery, but I probably say on as well. I bet on is a collocation. To bet on. Let me see if I can put that up here where somewhere it works. Bet on. If you bet on something, and that's actually from there. In the world of lottery, we bet. Bet is to gamble. Gamble on. And if you play on the lottery, or just play the lottery would work. We can use on or in this phrase. Okay, back to our materials. We've got our second question, guys. You're doing great. I want to hear your answers too. What would you do if you had the chance to travel around the world, all expenses paid, so everything paid for, 7 days, but would lose your job in the meantime? Oh no. So we've added another clause on here, which is really good. But would lose your job. So you can add other things, conditions, other conditions with this, but would lose your job. What would I do if for 7 days? Well, I would hope that I could find another job. I would hope is our infinitive there. I would hope. I would. I Now we can use the negative here. I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to lose the opportunity to travel, all expenses paid. I wouldn't want to. So remember, you've got your negatives in here as well. Any examples? Get typing. As you're typing, I'm going to look at the next one. We have what would you do if you left something in a locked building? Oh no. What would you do if you left something in a locked building? Well, if it was my work building, I would try to call my boss. If it was something urgent, some more language here that's good. Urgent, very similar to the Italian. Urgent means something very important here. Not behind me, urgent. So we've got something urgent locked into a building. I would call whoever was in control of that building. I would call, again, that same structure. But if it was not urgent, I wouldn't do much. I would go home. I wouldn't worry. I wouldn't worry. Guys, keep your practice going. Keep on working hard. I want to see some more examples. I want to see really creating some of this language at home. Type it into the box. Go. What would you do if you had the chance to travel around the world, all expenses paid for 7 days, but would lose your job in the meantime? Or what would you do if you left something in a locked building? Get typing. I want to hear your answers. As I wait for that, we're going to have a little continue here because we have some more examples. And in a minute after that, we're going to start looking at the third conditional. But first, some more questions. What would you do if you could spend 20 minutes talking to the president of your country? Wow, that's a good one just now. I think there would only be a couple of topics happening. So this is a question for me, meaning the president of Italy or the prime minister of Britain or the queen. I guess the queen is the head of state, so I would be talking to the queen. Now, I think I would ask a few questions, quite a few interesting questions, but certainly if I was talking to so if I had the opportunity, it's past simple, if I was talking to So a past continuous is really nice in here. You can expand this language. If I was talking to the president of Italy, I would definitely ask some things about coronavirus. You've got, I mean, if you have the opportunity, you have to go crazy, right, and ask about conspiracy theories. Okay, we've got an example here. I would call the security to let me go inside the building if I left something in. Now, excellent example here. This is fantastic because it introduces another way of answering. Look at the construction here. That's really interesting. Now, I would call the security to let me go inside the building if I left something in there. We would use that there to repeat the building situation. Now, we've got something really interesting here because we have a change of clause. So we have if clause, if I plus past simple or past continuous, as it may be, comma, and would clause. But what the Jackal 91 has done is they have put the would here and this clause here. Now, because if is a conjunctive part of speech, we can use the if to join these two clauses. So in this one, we don't need the comma. We don't need the comma. So if I'm going to rewrite that, I would call security if I left something inside a building. So here we have the if down here without the comma, because if joins the two clauses naturally in speech. But what you did there was really great. Jacopo was really great, Jacopo. What you did was you changed the position of the clause, which was fantastic. And you can do that. It's really, really good. Good creative stuff. Okay, coming back, we've got, and Alessandro, if I left something in a locked building, I would break into it and then I would be arrested, but with my stuff. That's a fantastic statement. I'm going down with my things. If I need to be arrested, I'm going down with my wallet and my smartphone. Fantastic. The grammar here is perfect. Really, really good. I would call security if I left something inside a building. Okay, this is our really nice structure here that we're going to use. Now let's go back to the materials because we have some new examples. Keep typing. What would you do if you could spend 20 minutes talking to the president of your country? What would you do? What would you say? What would you ask? What would you inquire? All this language. We'll give you some more examples as well. I think I would ask them about the coronavirus and how long they think it will last for. It would last for. Okay, what would you do if a famous movie star worth millions of dollars knocked on your apartment door and asked you to marry him or her? Oh, wow. Now, that's a big consideration. What would you do? Would you drop everything? I would drop everything, drop all of my responsibilities, drop everything, and run away with him or her? Or would you say, no, I'm sorry, I'm in a committed relationship? Or would you say, no, I'm not into money? Or would you divorce your current husband or wife and create some sort of new superstar scenario, what would you do? Give me an example. Tell me your opinions. And remember, you can be really creative with this. Really, give me your language. What would you do? Create an imagined, a hypothetical scenario. Really produce some language that we can talk about. I'm going to go on to the last one as well. We've got, what would you do if a dog on the street started talking to you in English? Well, I would be confused. I would be confused, certainly. Then I would ask how it learned English, and then I would gather myself. I would take stock and understand whether or not I was crazy. Okay, let's have a look. We've got, I would kick him in the ass if I had 20 minutes with him. I'm going to say that's not the dog. I'm going to say that would be the president. Okay, that's fair. So any other ones? Yeah, absolutely, of course. So any other examples is a good one. The grammar is perfect. I would kick. I would is perfectly fine here. The context is already created for our conditional language, and we're responding with would. Okay, I'm going to keep on giving you some more time because in 1 minute, we're going to move on to the third conditional, which is a little bit more complex. Let's have a look at this one here from Valentina. If Henry Cavill knocked at my door and he asked me to marry him, I would say yes, yes, yes. Now, I'm just going to quickly search Henry Cavill. Who's Henry Cavill? Okay, I think I've seen this guy before. Okay, is this Game of Thrones? Oh no, what's he in? This is a very specific dude. Oh, he's Superman. Okay. An interesting example. Fantastic. The grammar is excellent. If Henry Cavill knocked, past simple, at my door, again, preposition is good, at my door or on my door, both are fine. And he asked me to marry him, I would say yes, yes, yes. And he asked me, great, we're following up a past simple with another past simple, creating that first if clause, making it more complex, being really creative with it. Really nice there. And we've got another example. If a famous movie star knocked on my apartment door and asked me to marry her, I would pack my things to leave with her. I hope my wife doesn't read this. Excellent example. The grammar is perfect. We're really using the second conditional well. Okay, now that we're using this language really well, let's look at a little bit more complex kind of stuff. Because the second conditional is used for hypothetical situations in the present or the future. If I was given a job, I would do something. That sounds more in the future. If I was an elephant, I would. This is not really future. This is an imagined present. Okay. I would say him, oh no, thanks. No thanks. Now be careful, Juicy. I would say to him or I would tell him. So we've got to use our to or tell in there. So third conditional, we're moving on to third conditional. Some important language here for speculating on the past. Now, third conditional, when is it used and how is it formed? Now we have the second conditional. We have the second conditional for the present or the future imagined. But the third conditional is really about the past. It's about an imagined past. So yesterday, I went to the supermarket at 6 p.m. But now we're imagining if I hadn't gone to the supermarket, What would I have done instead? Maybe I would have stayed at home. So there's a few extra words in there and a few extra important grammatical parts of speech that we need to use. And to make this, we're going to have a look at some of this language here. So we have to first look at our construction. If plus past perfect. Now, level 8 to 10, some of you students will not be confident with past perfect yet. But you will study it again in the future, and it's a tense that is really useful and is really interesting. What we use it is for describing two past actions, one before another action. In the third conditional, it's quite important, and I'll give you examples in a moment. Then again our comma and would have past participle. Now, when we're learning would have, we've got all sorts of examples. Would have been, would have seen, would have done. It looks a lot like present perfect. The structure looks like it, but we have would in there. And that's what pulls it into our conditional language. I would have talked to him earlier. So let's look at some examples because this can be quite confusing, but with the examples, it becomes clear. Okay, here we go. If I had studied harder, I would have graduated. So, if I had studied harder, in the past, where this statement means I studied hard, but there's a hypothetical past where I studied harder. If I had studied harder, I would have graduated. There's another thing in the past here. So we have our position now. We have our past. This might be simpler in a timeline, actually. We've got a timeline here. We've got our timeline. I'm going to make this bigger so we can see it. And hopefully speak towards the computer so you can hear me. We have our timeline. Here's our imagined past hypothetical option. If I had studied harder, I would have graduated. This is the imaginary graduation. And this is now. This is now. This is the reason we use past perfect, because this is before this. So we need to, in grammar, with our grammar, we need to describe this relationship. And with these examples, this should become clear. If I had been born, so had been born is a passive. That's a past perfect passive. So it's even more complicated language. If I had been born in England, I would have been fluent. If I hadn't slept in, I wouldn't have been late to class. If I hadn't slept in, I wouldn't have been late to class. Now, I'm only spending a short period of time on this conditional because this is just an introduction to the language. You will study this more and more and control it better. And you will study past perfect as well and get this really confident in your mind. But today we're going to introduce some more scenarios to get you thinking and trying to create. So we have about 5 minutes and see if we can produce this language. Okay, we've got a question here. I have a doubt. I know that there is also another conditional, if plus past perfect, would plus present. What's the difference with the third conditional? So this is really important. This is called a mixed conditional, but I don't want to spend too much time on this because it can be confusing. I will explain it as fast as possible. So, with your timeline is the important thing here. With your timeline, we have a past imaginary scenario, something that did not happen, but you are imagining a different past. If I had studied economy, I would have become an economist or something else. So would have become produces another past construction. However, Alessandro asked about I would become or I would be is a really easy one. If I had studied in the past, if I had studied economy, I would be. I would be. Now that is present language. So that's describing now. I would be an economist. So we have our past imagination and then a present outcome, a present result. Now, I'm not going to concentrate on that now, but I hope that helped, Alessandro. And if you want to study this more, go on to our platform. Remember, there is a section called Extra Content, and there will be an example exercise on there. There's lots of really useful stuff. Okay, so let's look at some more examples and see if we can create some of these. How would your day be different if you had woken up 2 hours late this morning? See if you can type in this. Now, I'll give you an example because the construction here is still quite difficult. If I had woken, so past participle, up 2 hours late this morning, I would have missed my breakfast. Let's look at my example here. If I had woken up 2 hours later this morning, so we can repeat the whole language point, or we can use I would have missed my breakfast just straight off. But here we've got a modal perfect here, would have missed. You will study this in level 10. Now, because I don't want you guys to stress about this language, and this is just an introduction, I'm going to zoom through this language and give you lots of examples. And then we're going to do a quick roundup at the end. Okay, what would you do? How would today have been different if it had snowed last night? Well, probably no different. If it had snowed last night, I would have done nothing different as I'm stuck in the house due to coronavirus. How would your life have been different if you had studied something different at university? This is a really good example for being clear and using this language. Actually, we've got a really nice one from Cinzia. If I had been the Prime Minister of Italy, I wouldn't have closed the cinemas. Fantastic. I know, maybe made it so that you have to sit 2 seats away from everyone or something. Okay, so we are officially running out of time, but I see, Cinzia, you're using this language really well. And I'm going to come back to this language in the next one, starting at 1 o'clock in 10 minutes. I'm going to be doing the same topic, and we're going to talk about the second conditional and the third conditional again. If you want, feel free. It's going to be the same material, But if you feel like you have more time and you want to study this again with me, come back and see what we're talking about at 1 o'clock. It will be the same material. Now, quick recap. We have a whole bunch of really interesting stuff here. We have our conditional, second conditional, which is looking at a hypothetical situation with the past simple or past continuous and a would clause. This would pushes us into our conditional language. We also had a quick look at our third conditional. Now, the third conditional, I don't want to spend too much time on because you will study this again at level 10. So when the school opens up again, come back to our lessons. Look forward to lesson 10.5, I think, after studying 10.1, 2, and 4, which are the important parts for building this language. And I hope to see you again when the school opens, okay? And until then, don't go crazy. I hope you guys are okay at home, and I hope all of your loved ones are okay. And I hope that if you know anyone with any small businesses, that they're surviving okay as well, because I know this is a tough time. Anyway, I'll love you and leave you and see you maybe in 10 minutes, okay? Okay. Bye, guys. Bye.